of opinion, its occasional moments of high hope and deathly hatred. The apocalypse is not an end. The apocalypse has no end. It continues to unravel and to display its power of uncertainty, indeterminacy. The story, the mist, has no end. It has no purpose beyond its own display of people scurrying around like ants in a disturbed ant-heap, and has no real ending. Just a momentary pause where the narrator, fiddling with the dial on an otherwise dead radio, thinks he hears a sound, one single word, the word at the end of the world. Or is he imagining it? Is he reforming a pointless, endless sound into an element in a recognizable language in order to provide himself with some hope? For when he recalls the word, if word it was, then this is one of the shapes that word takes for him. Hope. Hope as the product of the devastation of all hope. You may be pleased to hear I haven't got a huge amount longer to go. I mean in terms of this talk, not in terms of life. Well, how are we doing? I don't know about that. Of course, none of us do. That's the problem. No, that's all right. No. Mm. I'm fine. Are they okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? This doesn't feel like the end of the world, does it? Must be joking. Of course I'm not. Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay, I shall press on. Because at the end of the world, what else can we do? Max Brooks's novel World War Z was first published in 2006, but it begins with rumors from China about another pandemic. That'll be the SARS epidemic, you may recall, which lasted from 2002 to 2004. But it is, in a sense, not an apocalyptic novel. It's written from a future viewpoint where impending doom seems to have been averted and seems to have led instead to a temporarily satisfactory outcome whereby the threat from the usual plague of flesh-eating zombies, they're all around us obviously, has led to the establishment of a benevolent world government wherein differences among nations and states have been subsumed. The section headings in the novel tell their own story about the development of a pandemic and its aftermath, and here their headings are: warnings, blame, the Great Panic, turning the tide, home front USA, around the world and above, total war, and goodbyes. The form of the novel, World War Z, involves, you know that Max Brooks is the son of the great comic director Mel Brooks, the producer and so forth. Anyway, the form of the novel involves the narrator travelling the world and collating a host of individual stories and accounts in which we see the responses of different nations to this growing zombie threat, with each state responding in a way which is uncannily resonant of what we might expect. There are accounts of the inadequate response of the USA, where the pandemic is not taken seriously, with disastrous consequences, because everybody believes it's a conspiracy. Well. Of the ways in which placebos are marketed as effective against infection. Of the response in Israel, which is to build a wall to protect against contamination from the Palestinian territories. And of the mysterious fate of North Korea, where the entire population disappears, maybe into a vast system of underground bunkers which have been developed over the years to protect against invasion from the West. This is a massive satire. It's very good. The sacrifices made in order finally to overcome the zombies involve versions of most of the catastrophes and projected solutions currently faced by the world polity. Whole species of animal, including whales, have become extinct. Fossil fuels have become unavailable and alternative sources of energy are being actively explored. For example, sail has returned. I don't mean sails, I mean sail in the SAIL, sailboats, has returned as the only remaining safe means of sea travel and transport. Oh, how I wish. Life expectancy has diminished and access to running water and electricity has been drastically reduced. Apocalypse has, we might say, become relativized, with many of humanity's worst fears being realized. A new order is forced into existence, and new shapes of social and political cooperation are freed to emerge into that vacated space. Yeah, well, I mean, the metaphor of the zombie is, of course, multifaceted, as it's been through a long string of Gothic manifestations. Consumer capitalism, residual and ever-present slavery, mindless aggression, they're all there coded in the zombie. But so too we see zombification not only in the hordes themselves, but also in the responses of governments, thoughtlessly wedded as they are to previous forms of dealing with the unexpected, the unknown. The use of conventional military means, the building of walls, the offering of untested placebos, the notion of a final escape, the resort to nuclear warfare, all these means are tried and fail, obviously. Nothing can deal with the threat of apocalypse or the zombie pandemic. I'll turn now very briefly to my final text, which is the film Don't Look Up from 2021, directed by Adam McKay. Here, apocalypse arrives, as it did so many years ago in H.G. Wells's In the Days of the Comet, in the form of an object from space and predictions of its intersection with Earth, which will provoke mass extinction. Here, the scenario, though, proves all too familiar in the present day, in an opposition between those who fear the arrival of the comet and those who believe its presence will deliver job opportunities from mining the rare minerals it supposedly contains. An opposition all too clearly between humanity and those elements that believe that every phenomenon can be turned to the advantage of surplus profit. So here we see something we've seen before in various versions of Apocalypse, with a highly specific inflection, which maybe is best covered in this wry and queasily comic quotation from the critic Meghan Markle, the last one on your sheet. Don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault. Actually, it was just as much your fault as it was anyone else's. Actually, it wasn't, because none of us, as far as I know, are American. Sorry, that was me, not Meghan Markle. I'll go on now with Meghan Markle. Come to think of it, if you're an American, it was probably about 80 to 90% more your fault than the average human. But don't let that get you down. It wasn't exclusively your fault. Unless you're the president. Then it might be your fault. But you'll have plenty of interns to tell you that it wasn't. So you'll be fine. As always, the question of apocalypse as represented in fiction, and how else could it possibly be represented since there hasn't been one, comes down to power. The power to cause and the power to avert. In any apocalypse, whether it comes down from a comet or up from the undead, to even across from a neighbouring polity, China having been the favourite for some time, what is coded is the possibility that could somehow have been avoided. And that, of course, is the message we get from the Christian Bible in the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah, perhaps the most well-known of all the original narratives of Apocalypse. It's true that we are never told in what specific ways the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were sinful, but sin and punishment are undoubtedly what is at stake. When Abraham asks God, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? The answer, though not given in quite so many words, is crystal clear. Yep, I will. 'Tis however true that the myth of Sodom and Gomorrah has a more overt patriarchal inflection than many of its more recent avatars, both in the offering of the virgin daughters as sacrifices and in the final fate of Lot's wife. But maybe the function of this aspect of the story might be to invite us to speculate further on apocalypse, gender and sexuality, because among other things, apocalypse signifies the end of reproduction, and thus, according to patriarchal law, the end of temptation. All things, according to the Bible, begin with temptation. All things must therefore end with the removal of temptation and the sacrifice of the female principle. By way of a conclusion, just be a couple of minutes, I want to do an experiment based in part on Christopher Ricks's experiment in his 2003 book, Dylan's Visions of Sin, where he tries to provide a narrative of Bob Dylan's lyrics in terms of a rather shaky framework based in part on the 7 deadly sins. My own framework is taken from Neil Gaiman's Gothic apocalyptic graphic novel sequence, The Sandman, which I'm sure many of you know, 1989 to 96, wonderful book. The world of The Sandman focuses on a grouping of deities known as the Endless: dream, destiny, death, desire, despair, delirium, who's formerly been known as delight, and destruction. Consider these 7 not obviously as deities, but as anthropomorphized attributes and as narrative principles, each with their own version not only of the endless, but also of the ending. The tone of the ending. The apocalypse of the Mask of the Red Death seems to me all too obviously in the realm, the kingdom of delirium. After all, this is what motivates and overwhelms the entire company. That hideous strength, not least because of its Christian overlay, might appear in the realm of destiny. Dead of Night, many critics have said, takes place in a register indistinguishable from dream. I'm going to place High Rise on the chart opposite the sign Death, because what is left at the end, whatever it might be, of the man Lang is clearly not human. The Mist, it seems to me, can be placed under the sign of despair, not least because of the unending possibilities for religious self-delusion and delusion of others that form the mainstay of the character interactions. World War Z, destruction. The destructiveness of the zombies and what they reveal of the parallel destructiveness of nationalism and confected patriotism. Which leaves Don't Look Up to the realm of desire. Desires including greed, corruption, the unthinking pursuit of satisfaction while the world around us is in imminent danger of burning. These, then, I suggest, are all versions of Gothic apocalypse. And if one of the hallmarks of the Gothic is the retelling of history through a different lens, and another is a constant dealing with the supernatural, then it would be difficult indeed to think of an apocalypse that is not Gothic. But I suggest they all have also to do with some version of what we might think of as pandemic. If we follow the definition of pandemic as that which perhaps paradoxically belongs to all the people, even if by the end, whatever the end might be, what belongs to the people, what marks humankind out as differentiated from the rest of the universe, is precisely nothing. Thank you very much.